So only a few days after I had made that video talking about how you shouldn't celebrate the shutting down of studios or the firing of people, there's this wonderful article from Bloomberg, inside Activision Blizzard's corporate Warcraft, and it kind of just highlights everything I was talking about. So I feel very vindicated here. I'll go over here and I'll just give my perspective as a developer. Bobby Kotick and Mike Morhaime couldn't have been more opposite if they'd grown a laboratory. Mike Morhaime was like the original Blizzard CEO. This is somebody who was actually a really good CEO. He was not this detached, person that didn't want to make the company better. He cared about everybody from like the bottom up. And he had like from what I understand, a direct. You could have direct contact even if you were as low as a junior. You could email him directly and say, "Hey, here's some areas we could improve on, and here's some issues or whatnot." Perhaps the only things they had in common were that they both ran video game companies, and they were both very rich as a result. Um, Bobby Kotick being from Activision, though, if you knew about Activision back in the day, it was not a great company for development. Before he became the charming and boisterous chief executive officer of Activision, which produces the war shooter franchise Call of Duty, Kotick skipped classes so he could focus on money making endeavors and eventually dropped out of college. Orheim, who co-founded and ran Blizzard Entertainment, was the nerdy, introverted student who sat in the front row and cracked open VCRs after school for fun. When they were fully grown, Kotick went to celebrity parties in the Hamptons. Meanwhile, Morheim called up his programmers to ask about changes he noticed during late night sessions of StarCraft 2. I want you to take note of that because that right there is a very key distinction. Kotick maintained a private art collection worth millions of dollars, and Morheim's house tiles were inscribed with insignias from World of Warcraft. Like, I want you to see how like the differences between these two is so stark in contrast because of the fact that that really shapes why games are the way that they are and why you're like why is the game like this, like no gamer would want this. It's like, well, when Morheim was in charge, yeah, he's actively playing the product to learn how to improve it, and Kotick is just like, how do we get more money out of these people so that way I can fund my private art collection and continue to party with celebrities. For many years, the two had formed an unlikely yet harmonious pair. In 2007, Activision merged with Blizzard's parent company, Vivendi Games, to create Activision Blizzard Inc. It was a perfect partnership. Activision was a leader on consoles, while Blizzard dominated on computers. The combined entity would become the most valuable dedicated video game company on Earth, with a future market capitalization of 74 billion. 6 years after the merger, the problem started. In the spring of 2013, Blizzard canceled a buzzy video game project called Titan, a successor to World of Warcraft that intended to blend first-person shooters with the calming vibes of The Sims. After years of the management, the project was abandoned at a cost to Blizzard of $80 million. According to the people familiar with the project, who, like many of the people interviewed for the story, asked not to be identified to speak candidly, the cancellation of Titan eliminated one of the reasons Kotick had wanted to own Blizzard in the first place. With the World of Warcraft subscribers dropping by more than half from the high of over 12 million, Kotick was eyeing the next big thing. He touted World of Warcraft during investor presentations and Hollywood parties, occasionally bringing his devotion to meet celebrities such as Tom Brady. These guys made World of Warcraft, he'd say, and now they're making something even bigger. Okay, so originally Project Titan, I thought this was common knowledge, but Project Titan was originally an MMO that was supposed to be a first person shooter. That was the what Overwatch was. That's all of the abilities and characters and stuff you see in Overwatch were originally a class in Project Titan, from what I understood. And when Project Titan was canceled, they changed it from being a MMO to a competitive FPS game. So yeah, if like I thought that was it. I thought everyone kind of knew that, but I was kind of surprised that when I saw videos of other people talking about this, like apparently that's not common knowledge. But yeah, that's what I mean though when I said in the past videos, like you have these art assets and you have these things that do have value where maybe you tried something and it didn't work. You could still take what was there and salvage it to create another game or create a product that you can get money out of. This is one of the things that the industry does really poorly on is it doesn't try to salvage the stuff that still has value that you can still get money out of because like clearly it was a solid idea. Overwatch was fantastic and an amazing game when it came out. Um, so yeah, it's just more of a sign that like the industry needs to be better about like salvaging the things that, are good from these failed projects. Um, anyway, by this time, Kotick was becoming even more invested in Blizzard. In the summer of 2013, he struck a deal with Vivendi to buy its shares and take Activision Blizzard independent, effectively giving him and his allies control of the company. Kotick and his chief operating officer, Thomas Tipple, began to apply pressure, asking Morheim and other Blizzard executives to give a full accounting of how the Titan debacle happened and say, people familiar with the conversations, whose fault was it and why did nobody step in? Kotick, Morheim, and Tipple declined to comment. Now, this is what I mean by, like, whose fault was it? Like, dude, you're the head of the company. What do you mean, whose fault is it? Why did nobody step in? That's literally your job. What do you mean? I told you guys, these guys don't play video games. They make money. They run businesses. They have no fucking idea what they're doing when it comes to games. They show up and they're like, "Yeah, I don't understand. How could this happen? I'm only running this company." Like, are you or are you just cashing the paycheck now? Like, it seems like everybody else is making it run and you're not doing anything. Like, what do you mean? You have the most power in the company. What do you mean? Whose fault is it? Jesus. It was just Bobby's continued sense that we're not extracting enough value out of the IP, says Geo Hunt, a former executive at Blizzard. Even the way he'd say something like that would just make everyone at Blizzard upset. Yeah, of course. In the years that followed, Activision would take a large role in Blizzard's operations, driving out throngs of veteran staff as it pushed the game maker to cut costs and release products more quickly. Right. And so, it's like you get frustrated because you think your company's not doing well enough. So you push out your best staff because they get so frustrated working under these like crappy conditions. And then you have a less quality product and you're wondering why the quality of the product isn't doing well enough. Like, but by 2021, Blizzard's once pristine reputation was tattered by mass layoffs, public relations disasters, a botched game release, and a staggering lawsuit from California accusing parent company of systemic sexual misconduct and discrimination. Sensing an opportunity and perhaps a discount, Microsoft Corp struck a deal to buy the entirety of Activision Blizzard for $69 billion. And Activision Blizzard reached a settlement with California for $54 million without admitting to wrongdoing. Um, Although Kotick stepped down last December, the company is still reckoning with the impact of his reign and is falling out with Morheim. Many of the details of these disagreements have never been previously reported. It's in some way familiar with the story. The push and pull between business and creative interests and what's lost when one side wins out. The result will have a long lasting effect of the industry's most cherished studios and the world's second most valuable company, which is still trying to figure out where its new acquisitions fit into the portfolio gaming of business. Morheim couldn't have known it at the time, but the sinking of Titan would reshape the company he built and even tear him away from it. Morheim started Blizzard in '91 with Alan Adam, his classmate at the University of California at Los Angeles. Before long, they turn it into the most beloved game brand in the Western Hemisphere. For the first 2 decades, every title they put out was a hit. Warcraft Orcs and Humans, '94, and Microsoft DOS and asked players to innovate tokens by a world where they mine resources. Yeah, it's Warcraft. The 2 years later, Blizzard released Diablo, medieval hack and slash, StarCraft, uh, Warcraft formula, and creatures. Yeah, the whole history of Blizzard. The key to Blizzard's success was a philosophy instilled in the early days to value players above profits and to give every game as much time as it needed. A lesson learned in '96 when the first Diablo missed Christmas, but still sold 1 million copies, which was a big haul at the time. Uh, it'll be ready when it's ready. Blizzard employees like to say. In contrast, Kotick believed that in games, in what he called potential to be exploited every year across the platform. That's the reason why every year across the platform. That's the reason why you have Call of Duty come out every year, and there's two different studios that work on it. Um, so that way you can keep getting people to buy that new product every year. Um, that's the difference between, when a company is focused on trying to maximize profits and another company's that it's doing it for the sake of or for the love of doing it. Blizzard used to be that way. It's not that way anymore. Like, and this is what happens with a lot of companies, like a lot of big companies. You have Ubisoft, you have Blizzard, Microsoft, Activision, EA. Like every time you're sitting there wondering, like, why is it that these developers and these game companies always have these like crappy titles and stuff, and they just keep putting out garbage is because of the fact that it's not the developers. Like there's people in charge who are only interested in making money, and you have very little to any say when you are anything other than at the very top. And even if you happen to be a game director, there's still a decent chance you have like a Bobby Kotick above your head that is absolutely ruining any chance of success your game might have because they're going to come in and put their hand into things. And then when it fails, they'll be like, who can I fire? Because it's obviously somebody else's fault. It can't be me, the guy who runs the entire company. What a joke. Um, oh, where'd I leave off? In contrast, Kotick believed games with what he called the potential to be exploited every year across every platform, and the floors of his company were littered with corpses of franchise that had been sucked completely dry. Among them were Guitar Hero, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and Skylanders, which were purely physical toys with a video game in an especially lucrative combination. He was particularly excited about Titan. That Blizzard promised it would be a blockbuster-worthy successor, lucrative World of Warcraft, but Titan foundered for 7 years. I think they meant to say floundered. Dealing with technical challenges, shifting art direction, and an unclear vision from a mercurial director with too much on his plate. According to people familiar with the development, 2013, recognizing the lack of progress, Blizzard canceled the project later, calling the decision excruciating. I can only imagine how difficult it was because I remember they were in development working on that for a long time, and I don't know why it didn't. They couldn't figure out a way to make it work, but it was definitely like um, that would be a very difficult decision. And sometimes, like, you might have an idea for game design, you try it, and then when you try to actually implement it, it's not working. That's a realistic situation, which, like I said, even if it's not working, is there a way to salvage what you have? And they did with Overwatch. So it's like, you know, that's why it's even more frustrating because they could have cashed in on Overwatch even better than what they did, but they just failed, like from a business standpoint. The frustrated Kotick then put Morheim to bolster his C-suite and bring in a chief financial officer with experience at publicly traded company who could keep costs in check. Tipple recommended an old colleague named Armin Zerza, who worked with him at Procter and Gamble and Co., where they distributed detergent, shampoo, and diapers. So when I tell you that the people at top with the money, the people who are making the decisions, don't play video games, this is what I mean. The dude whose only expertise is selling detergent, shampoo, and diapers is the guy telling you this is what gamers are gonna have to live with. This is what you're gonna give the gamers. Like, that's the reason why games, like, with large AAA games have such a struggle sometimes. Over the course of a few hours, there's interviewed several Blizzard top executives and the game team leaders who convened the following week and agreed no way. They all had similar takeaways. Theirs didn't express much interest in gaming, told you, or Blizzard's player first culture. He just kept talking about how to make as much money as possible. According to people who were at the meetings, they described him as a sharp businessman with values that were at odds with Blizzard's. When you are trying to maximize your profits and you don't care about anything other than just making more money, that's what you get. You're not getting people who are focused on providing the players with a good experience and making money, making a little bit money on top of that. Like, it's about this, like, not just like, can we make money, but how can we make as much money as possible? And it's greedy and it's shitty and it's short term. It's such a short term way of looking at things. Cause these people, by the way, they will put the company into the ground and they will walk away with a paycheck. Like Bobby Kotick, like, didn't he left with like $500 million when the company got bought out. So every time people are like, "Oh, we're cheering on the layoffs and whatnot because these devs aren't doing a good job," it's just like, dude, they were getting run by a dude who is an expert in selling detergent, shampoo, and diapers, and you're blaming the developers at the very bottom of the totem pole for not making the game that you wanted them to make. Like, how much power do you think that we have in this like industry? Tipple asked Morheim to give Zerza another shot, so he came back for another round of interviews. This time, he talked less about profit margins. Blizzard executives began to feel like resisting was a losing strategy. Through Activision Blizzard spokesperson, Zerza declined to comment. Yeah. Blizzard hired Zerza in 2015 as its first CFO. He wanted to build a world-class finance department, and he began bringing in new employees and with Ivy League MBAs and backgrounds at firms like McKinsey and Co. Suddenly, finance people who had otherwise been relegated to background were fixtures in strategy meetings asking why Hearthstone, a Magic Gathering-esque mobile game, wasn't pushing players to buy card packs more often, and why Overwatch, an online shooting game, wasn't selling maps and heroes to generate extra revenue. I told you all, when the people at the top don't play video games, but they have these ideas of like, here's what you should be doing. Every time you get one of those crappy ideas, a lot of times it's coming from them. And like, don't get me wrong, like, there's always going to be that there could be dev, it could be the side of devs. Like, there could be something where you disagree with how the devs do things. But so much of that is muddied with poor management, poor leadership, and these people who don't play video games, who don't understand anything other than just like, yo, why are we not selling maps and heroes to generate extra revenue? Well, anybody who plays Overwatch knows that in a competitive FPS hero based shooter game, you have an advantage by having certain heroes. Magna meta, to speak of one, uh, and they of course walked that back, but it was only after I think like Microsoft took over and Kotick was out. But like uh, this is why I'm so frustrated whenever I see videos on the internet talking about, "Oh, here's what, the industry failing is a good thing and these layoffs are fine, like it'll eventually like course correct." Like, no, it won't. These people who are going to tank this company are going to go to the next company and just tank that too, and they're all gonna get paid from it because all while the game is making money, that money is going to those people. It's not going to the developers that get laid off. So, yeah, I don't know. This whole article is accurate, and it's just like, it just bugs me. The company was doing well. Its revenue was 2.4 billion in 2016, thanks to continued success of World of Warcraft. The runaway hit Overwatch. Still, Xerxes seemed perplexed why Blizzard was maintaining expensive projects with low profit margins, such as the annual BlizzCon event. I don't know. What is the purpose of making sure you have a dedicated player base as a as a game developer company? I don't know. I mean, people constantly are stoked every year to go see what you have to announce and stoked to cosplay. Like, the most hardcore cosplayers went to BlizzCon, and now in the last few years before they stopped doing it, the BlizzCon was dead. The love for Blizzard has died. Like, even games, I'm convinced, like some of the Diablo games and stuff that didn't do well in terms of like its reviews, still did well financially because Blizzard has a dedicated player base. Like, that's how hardcore they are, or used to be, I should say. Blizzard managers explained that having their own convention engendered loyalty from its customers and employees. Zerza suggested they kill it and say people who attended those meetings. Don't doubt it, because why? I mean, like, you don't have conventions for laundry detergent and diapers. Why would we need it for a Blizzard for a gaming company? Before Zerza, the company was run by Blizzard lifers and video game enthusiasts, but the CFO brought a completely different mindset. He frequently drew comparisons to his 2 decades developing brands such as Crest, Huggies, and Ivory, for example, asking why Blizzard didn't just speed up development of game um, by opening a new office, as he'd done to ship soap more quickly in Brazil. Blizzard employees recall scoffing behind his back at his seemingly inability to understand the video game industry, pointing out that no one would fly thousands of miles to attend a shampoo convention or meet their best friend through a shared love of their favorite toothpaste. In the coming years, there's to gain more powers. There's to gain more power. See, and that's also what I mean. Like, the people in charge who have no good ideas are also the ones who can gain more power because it doesn't matter that you don't play video games. It doesn't matter that you don't understand your product. And it doesn't matter that you're essentially just cashing in off of the backs of the developers who actually are doing the work. This person was moved up. Like, he got more power in the company and more money. Staff began to see him as an avatar for Kotick, there to serve the CEO's will, a reasonable, if not totally accurate characterization. Occasionally, Zersa would disagree with Kotick and push back against budget cuts. Um, According to people who were in meetings with them both, Kotick wasn't going to force Blizzard to release games before they were ready, but this message was consistent. Blizzard was letting its players down by not delivering uh, game content more often. To Morheim and his inner circle, these demands were contradictory. Kotick celebrated when Blizzard produced a new hit, but failed to grasp what it took to create one. Uh, yeah, I mean, Kotick doesn't understand video games. He understands money, fancy art collections, and celebrity parties. Um, he's one that doesn't give a crap. He likes to flex. He likes to flex his wealth, and it's funny to me that someone could have like a private art collection, but also have absolutely no understanding of what art really is. Like, to me, someone like him having an art collection isn't a way to show off parts of your personality. I believe it sounds like Bobby Kotick is the type of person to have a private art collection in order to flex how expensive his private art collection is. And, it doesn't surprise me that when I remember, because I remember Activision back in the day, and I remember when Activision Blizzard merged, I was like, that's a terrible idea because Activision was an ass company uh, back at the time. To merge with Blizzard at the time, who was an amazing company, I was like, that doesn't seem like a good idea. But I don't know if there could have been business reasons behind that. Oh, by 2017, Kotick and Tipple were battling with Morheim every day. They asked why Blizzard had so many people in non-development departments, particularly customer service and cinematics, uh, which is the reason why everyone knows that customer service for Blizzard has gone so downhill that you can't even get anything other than automated reports sent back to you. I've tried and I just gave up. Like I just stopped playing games. Uh, and cinematics, Blizzard cinematics used to hype you up. Used to be ready. Like it made you stoked to come back to the game or stay in the game. Like you wanted to see more. A group that made short films based on the games. The answer players appreciated those things. During the planning meetings, Activision executives would point out that they had more than 1,000 people in Call of Duty, while World of Warcraft only had a few hundred. Tipple offered man month calculations to determine that the only way to release new content more quickly, a goal both companies share, would be to add hundreds more people to the World of Warcraft team. I don't, I don't know how many people know this. When you see video game credits, there's usually like a long like credit list. The game development company uh, is not that big. Like when you see that long list of credits at the very end of the game, what you're talking about is like everybody behind the scenes. The development company itself, uh, you're looking at probably for a AAA title, maybe by the end of development, like maybe like 100 to 150 that I've experienced. Sometimes it goes a little bit more than that, but like World of Warcraft is a very huge game. So having 300 people is still a lot. Like that's a lot of people. But it's very difficult to manage 300 people and have a solid vision of what's going on when you have that many people. And also at the same time, the problem is if you have too many people, not just you lose sight of the vision, have trouble like controlling everything. But if things don't go well, then how many people do you need to lay off? Right? Like how many people can you survive with if you have too many people? And to those at the top in the industry, we are disposable. So they would easily have no problem saying, "Let's hire 700 more people, and if it doesn't work out, then we'll lay off 700 people." Like they don't care about us. So like there's a reason why like you don't have that many people on a team at once. And even then, even if you had more people, like it still takes time to just make stuff, and you could be blocked by somebody in the process of making something. Say you have 400 designers. That's a crazy number. Say you have a bunch of designers, but they're all waiting on tech to be made in order for those designers to move forward, and they're bottlenecked. Well, the tech to be made is being made by like one programmer, and so then you have a bunch of people sitting on their thumbs like waiting, because you can't just have more people working on the same thing. Like you need to have time to gradually build this stuff up. You can't just, like, throw more people at it. We aren't toothpaste. Like, uh, let's see. Go would be to add hundreds more people to the World of Warcraft team. Morheim, who believed in giving his teams agency to make their own hiring decisions, was resistant. Tipple snarked at Blizzard to change its company value to every voice within Blizzard matters. That's a like, hey, instead of players first, this is such like corporate speak of just like, hey, every voice matters. Like, I'm sorry, but you don't play video games. Your voice doesn't matter. Like, if you don't play video games, you don't know what players want, then I don't care what your voice has to say. Like, straight up. Like, uh, that is just a way of just being like, what? Don't you like my free speech on my side? Like, no, dude. Like, you have nothing of value to add. Like, get out. One of the most significant fights between Activision and Blizzard was over how to reward staff. Kotick believed in giving the biggest bonuses to the teams that delivered the largest profits, which would make more people move to World of Warcraft. While Morheim thought the entire company should benefit from profit sharing. Otherwise, there'd be no incentive for people to experiment with new ideas. Yeah. Profit sharing makes more sense because of the fact that World of Warcraft could sell a single skin for millions, while somebody who took a chance to try and create a new, innovative idea maybe didn't work out. And then um and then they don't get as much money for it, right? So then if you know the amount of money that you get is going to be directly based off of whatever gets the company the most money, all you're going to do is just sell skins, which is what Blizzard is now. Like they just all they do is they just sell skins. This is the number one reason too why I don't give Blizzard any money, like ever. Like the last money I gave them was like pre-ordering for Overwatch 2, which I regret, and I have yet to spend money in that game since. I played it up until a little until recently, season 11, I was on my way out. Season 12, I played a little bit. I just don't care. Like I'm after seeing the way that they've treated their employees and the way they've treated my friends, like I'm not giving them any money. Like Blizzard is not the same company it used to be anymore. They struck a few compromises over time as Morheim agreed to shift a greater portion of profit sharing to the World of Warcraft team without eliminating bonuses for other divisions, but the argument was always simmering. Kotick valued consistency, and Blizzard's belief in experimentation was at odds with that. Blizzard profits swung like a pendulum. I mean, sometimes that happens, right? But I mean, like, your profits swing like a pendulum, but whose lifestyle are you funding, right? Like, when you give money to Blizzard, who do you think that money's going to? Do you think it's going to the developer who's at the bottom who created that skin, or do you think it's going to Bobby Kotick's private art collection? Like that's what I want. Well, that's what I want gamers to think about when they're spending money in a game. Like you're not just spending money in a game to support a game. What you're spending money in a game to do is to support like the CEO's private art collection and parties with celebrities. Like that's what you're spending money on most of the time. Like does some of it allow it to come back to like the developers? Like sure, but like, kind of, I don't know. I would rather just spend my money on other games at this point. Um, in 2017, it was swinging back in. At that point, Blizzard had nothing significant to reverse the momentum. By the end of that year, Zerza had been promoted to CEO at the Blizzard, was overseeing many departments and leading the longtime staff, begin accepting dismal reality. Going to work every day was getting less fun. Yeah, I wonder why. Because like going to work for a bunch of soulless corporate overlords who are telling you that we're going to cut all of the things that you and gamers love in order to increase profits, like, yeah, you just lose heart and soul of the game. And I understand too, like your profits are going to swing uh in a company quite a lot, but you know, that's going to happen in game development. You're not going to have always a game that comes out every single year. You can try and maybe plan for that. That would help keep the revenues up, I imagine, but sometimes revenues don't always go as the way you plan. Sometimes you're going to have some years better than others, but like, what kind of lifestyle are you living in that you're not able to weather these storms, right? This is what I mean is like you have these mass layoffs that hit employees who are living paycheck to paycheck. And Bobby Kotick signed out with $500 million and Xerxes still there. Like cheering on employees to get laid off is crazy to me. Uh, Kotick had always harbored a not so secret desire to expand his empire beyond game publishing. He established an Activision Blizzard film and television studio in 2015, promising a Call of Duty cinematic universe, and hiring Stacey Sher, producer of Pulp Fiction, and Aaron Brockovich to help run it. Later during the presentation to investors, he outlined plans for Activision to become more like Walt Disney Co. He spent $5.9 billion to acquire acquire King, the maker of Candy Crush, and planned to go big on in-game advertising. He brought in former ESPN CEO Steve Bornstein to create an esports division. Announced that Activision bought the assets of Major League Gaming Corp, then a leading U.S. esports company for $46 million to create the ESPN of esports. The sudden enthusiasm for competitive gaming was a surprise to Morheim, and past Kotick had protested Blizzard's investments in esports, but Blizzard's leadership chose to see the change at heart as an opportunity. I'm betting he saw that because he saw like what League of Legends and other companies were doing and how many people were watching. He didn't see it as like, oh, this is going to be a great sign for us as a company. For gamers, this would be a great sign for me to make money. A small team of Blizzard employees met with Kotick to formally pitch what they were calling Overwatch League, an esports circuit modeled on traditional sports leagues. Kotick loved the idea to put money in Activision's marketing behind it, envisioning it as the esports equivalent to National Football League, according to ESPN. Nate Nanzer, who had become the commissioner of the Overwatch League, had suggested charging a potential $250,000 to establish the team. Kotick said they aimed bigger, $20 million per franchise. Everyone was shocked. $20 million. Most of the world didn't even know what Overwatch was. But Kotick wanted to recruit billionaires who already owned sports teams and didn't want to underprice the opportunity. Ugh. what I mean when I'm like, dude, the people with the money don't care. Like, they're so disconnected from reality. Like, and Overwatch League was an absolute fucking mess. Like, and we know it. Like, it was it was a mess because it was run by someone who was only interested in the paycheck and didn't actually care what gamers wanted to watch or what would make it better. Like, it was just a whatever. Over the next year, Activision Blizzard hired executives from NFL and NBA to staff its esports division, largely overlooking the expertise within Blizzard's existing esports group. In 2017, Activision absorbed Blizzard's consumer products division, responsible for selling gear and striking deals with outside companies such as Lego. As Kotick wanted to make hats, shirts, mugs based on the Overwatch League. We were hiring people left and right, says Matt Beecher, who was Blizzard's vice president of consumer products. It was just wild. Yeah, I remember that. Like, it was kind of exciting, but also like it fizzled out very quickly. It seems like people who just like bought a bunch of stuff and marketed a bunch of things and didn't actually have a plan. The NFL of esports team turned out to be more like the XFL. Activision shut down the Overwatch League in 2013, saying it had faced headwinds, but the project, which was built around Blizzard Game but overseen by Activision, was a harbinger of Kotick's new approach. He wanted control. In spring of 2017, Tipple stepped down as Activision CEO. Somehow things got worse after that. Morheim and his circle discovered that Tipple and some had sometimes served as a counterweight to Kotick and had been willing to check some of the CEO's worst impulses. His successor, Cotty Johnson, went from being Kotick's cordial and seemingly reasonable chief of staff to another potential roadblock. In April 2018, Johnson organized an off-site event for leaders of all three divisions: Activision, Publishing, Blizzard, and King. The theme was unification. Like, that's such corporate speak for like, hey, we're going to invite like one gamer here, and the rest of us are going to be on business. So we're all going to talk about, you know, ways we can run this company while never actually understanding any of the products. Oh, Kotick and Johnson were putting corporate slogans behind a dynamic that had been apparent to Morheim for years. Blizzard was losing its independence. Blizzard had already been seeing the departures of important staff, including the heads of Hearthstone. Many of their main executive producers and directors were expressing frustration with what they saw as Activision's growing interference. After the offsite, Morheim wrote a lengthy email to Kotick, shared several other executives declaring Blizzard had reached a tipping point. I believe that preserving Blizzard's culture and magic is a necessity for preserving Activision Blizzard's advantage to having an organization that can attract and retain the best creative talent in the world and that can consistently produce the highest quality games and experiences, he wrote. It has been increasingly hard for me to provide Blizzard leadership and staff confidence that Blizzard has a stable future. Um, by the summer of 2018, even entry level Blizzard employees were accepting a reality that had been long shielded from them. Activision people were everywhere. There was a lot of talk of budget concerns and cost cutting. Uh, Marketing, legal, HR, and many other departments and new bosses at the parent company. It was always very unclear who should be accountable, says Vincent uh, Francoeur, head of Blizzard's web and mobile department. Not everyone objected to all the changes. Some Blizzard employees embraced Activision's focus on business models, especially as Blizzard experimented with free to play mobile games and other newer ways to make money. In the past, it had been anathema to even bring up finances and game development meeting at Blizzard. Getting development teams closer to the economics was healthy, says Tim Morin, the production director of StarCraft 2. Having run a successful company for 2 decades, Morheim had more business sense than Activision people gave him credit for. He was just as competitive as colleagues at Activision. One of his hobbies was playing poker at a professional level. He'd spent years trying to find ways to satisfy Kotick without giving up what he thought what made Blizzard great. He was a profit motivated guy like everybody else, says Hunt. The former executive was Morheim's chief of staff for about 2 years. The difference is he wasn't a very profit motivated first guy. Like, this is why every one of these big companies eventually just starts to dish out like crappy products. Morheim was one of the rarities. Like, he was one of the rare people who was first motivated by wanting to make sure that the product was great. Of course, like he's clearly like a businessman. He wants to make profit, but he's not so obsessed with making a profit in order to constantly get more and more and more money. Like, he's wanting to make a great product first. And every time he made a great product, he made a profit. But people like Bobby Kotick and these other CEOs and whatnot, like, they're interested in just seeing the profit margins. And then when the company doesn't do well, they're like, who do we need to fire in order to make sure that this doesn't happen again? It's like, you, man, like, you ran the company. How are you going to sit there and act surprised when a product that you made ships and people don't like it? Like, This is so frustrating because, like, when you're the bottom of the totem pole in these, like, developments, you're sitting there sounding the alarms, being like, "Hey, we need to change this. Hey, we need to do different things." And then you have people above you being like, "Why would we do that? That doesn't make sense. Like, how would we profit like that?" And it's just like, it's not gonna profit if nobody likes it, and they're just like, "No, no, no, this'll be fine." And then it's not fine, and then they're just like, "Well, we need to lay off everybody because we don't have enough money." It's just like, right, but, like, every person you lay off is taking the hit, and you're still taking an income from the rest of the company, despite the fact that, like, the company when people say the company's not doing well, so they have to make layoffs, there's no, like, it's very rare I hear about people taking pay cuts, you know what I mean, from the top, like, it very rarely happens, because I can tell you right now, like, when a company is doing well, you get your yearly salary. And when the company does poorly, you lose your job. But like Bobby Kotick still has his art collection and parties with celebrities. I hate these people. Ah, that philosophy made him vulnerable. Those who sympathize with Kotick's perspective pointed out that in 2018, Blizzard generated less profit than King or Activision Publishing while employing more people. On top of that, there weren't any big games in the media pipeline. StarCraft and Here's the Storm have been struggling to generate revenue. New Diablo and Overwatch games were still years away, and other incubation projects were still early to count on. My question is, like, like it says it generated less profit. Well, less profit is still profit, right? So, are we comparing it to people where it's just like, is this like some sort of a sign that like, oh, if we can't keep up at this, or we can keep up at this but we're not really generating as much, like at what point is there enough, right? If all you do is like you come out with games and a couple of them don't quite hit but you still have profit and you can still keep making games, is that not enough? Like, can you not just like, salvage what you can? I mean, like, Overwatch was a project that failed but was under Titan, and then came back and became one of their biggest hits. Like, why I wanna know what's going on, like, what you consider to be, like, not enough profit. Like, is was the company about to go under if it didn't, or was it being held up by King and Activision, or was it just less than what you wanted? Um, People around Morheim worried that his fights with Activision were taking a toll. He'd already submitted a resignation letter in 2017, but Kotick, and Blizzard colleagues close to Morheim had persuaded him to walk it back. I'm sure it's because it just wouldn't look good. In the spring of 2018, after the one ABK offsite, Morheim realized that he lost and began to quietly talk with other Blizzard executives about a succession plan. On October 3rd, 2018, Morheim announced that he was stepping down. Didn't offer much explanation to the public, writing in the blog post that he decided it's time for someone else to lead Blizzard Entertainment. But those who worked closely with him knew why he left. He was tired of fighting with Kotick. "You look like a second-term president," said one of the former executive who asked not to be identified. And this is one of the things that game developers do is like you want to not be identified because if you don't, you get blacklisted from the like if you do, you get blacklisted from the industry. Like if you're wondering why don't we hear about this stuff more often, the industry is small and these people are the ones that run it. And if you piss them off and they know about you, you're not getting hired other places. Like, and the jobs are hard to get and it's flooded with a bunch of people. So, you can't be blacklisted. So it's hard to speak out about any of this stuff. Um, Blizzard staff was devastated. They worshiped Morheim. He was the boss who greeted receptionists by name, responded directly to emails from low level workers. Hundreds of employees wrote emails and letters to Morheim to thank him and wish him farewell. They soon discovered that Morheim already knew, discovered what Morheim already knew. Blizzard would never be the same. Like, I am right so often, and yet nobody ever listens anyway. Like, I still can't help but feel like, yeah, all of those hate-filled, uh, YouTube videos that come across my timeline of like, this is why, Blizzard developers deserve to be fired. This is why, all of these layoffs of these companies are justified. It's like, when you're actually in the mix and you see these things happen, like, you feel so hopeless. Like, the industry that you love and that you want to have an impact on, you show up and like you have so much passion and they just beat the crap out of you until you don't have passion anymore and you leave. Um, that's why a lot of people who work in the game industry don't last for very long. Like, there's not a lot of old people in the game industry because of the fact that many of them eventually leave to find literally any other job that has more job security, even less pay, just because of the fact that they just don't want to deal with this kind of crap. And it sucks. But like when you're sitting there wondering, oh, why are games made so poorly? Like, why is it that like all of where are all of our things that we want? Where are where's our conventions? Where's our TV shows? Where's our stuff to hype us up? Like, why do we only get like skins released over and over and over again? Because to them, they see those profits and they say, why don't we just only do that? Why don't we do more of that? Why don't we find more ways to charge them? Which is why like the predatory charging of like Overwatch 2 is one of the, and how they only release skins is like that's one of the big reasons why I just never bothered to give them any money. Like, their skins, of course, I look at 'em like, "Dang, that's actually kinda cool." I know that the artists are super talented, they probably work super hard on that. But if I buy that skin, is that skin going to the developer? Do I know that that money is going to that developer? Like, probably not. Like, I watched a bunch of people I knew who were very passionate, hardcore, dedicated Blizzard employees that got laid off, um, just because of the fact that to the people up top, they're like, "We don't think we're having enough profit here, so we are going to cut all of these people." And from a development standpoint, looking down, some of these people that they laid off, I'm like, that's some of the most talent, like those are some of the most talented people in the freaking industry. Like I more, better artists than me working there on projects that they had where it's just like, even if you didn't necessarily want to keep the project going, why would you let go of that talent? Right. So, anytime you're sitting there wondering, why are these bad games getting failed? You got to ask yourself, like, who's in charge of running that company? Is it somebody who's a hardcore, dedicated gamer who wants to see things improve? Uh, or is it some dude who wants to sell you soap and diapers? Like, or a guy who's more interested in showing off his art collection than and partying with celebrities and taking any sort of like responsibility for the company that he's running, right? So I don't know. To me, it's wild to have such a disconnect that you could be like at the very top of a studio, literally the highest position possible, and wonder whose fault something is that something didn't go right. Like whatever happened to the buck stops here. I I don't know. Maybe maybe I'm missing something, but it's just disappointing because these people are still running and making these decisions. Uh, Kotick got a $500 million like payout or something. Like he's fine. Um, and everybody else in the gaming industry is struggling. Like all the people at the bottom are struggling. All the people who are lower on the totem pole are struggling. So, you know, um, just be careful because I understand you get frustrated by game companies making bad decisions or game companies seeming like they just don't care about you. But uh, a lot of the developers, even if I have disagreements with how they go about like making things sometimes on like a, personal subjective level, they do care and they do this stuff because they're passionate about it. Like video games you don't get into because it pays well. Like it pays well if you're a CEO, but you don't get into video games to work 60-hour work weeks and crunch like crazy in order to make sure that, you can make somebody else a bunch of money. And then struggle to pay rent and stuff in some of the most expensive cities in the country. Like, you don't get into the game industry because it's the best way to make money. Like you get into the game industry because what you do. You love video games. Um, it's just unfortunate because the people at the top and the people making the decisions are also the people choosing who they promote. And obviously, like when I tell you, those people at the top who are the CEOs who are then hiring their friends who are from like, what was it, like diaper and lotion companies or, toothpaste companies, like they're hiring their friends. They're not hiring the gamers who understand what gamers actually want. They're hiring people who just know how to run a business. But video games is not the same as running toothpaste. And, they'll get a lot of those short-term rewards, those big profits that they make off of skins and stuff, that's because of the dedicated player base that was there from the beginning, but, it's gonna fizzle out. Um, and, just like Activision sort of lost steam in its years, like, Blizzard has too. That's what these guys do. They just hop from company to company, and they make their profits and then they leave. They leave the company a shell of what it used to be. So I don't know. Just be careful where you're directing your anger at people because of the fact that, like I said before in my other video, you're getting happy to see people get laid off in the industry, but the people I've seen get laid off in the industry are always some of the most talented, hardworking, dedicated people I've ever met in my entire life. And the people who always seem to get out with like a payday and move on and just get like, another job or take time off to, and do just fine are the people who made the bad decisions in the first place. Like, cheering on for game companies to do poorly isn't going to change things the way that you think. Like, yeah, Bobby Kotick is out now, but how long did that take? And how many projects failed under his decision making, and how much of his decision making is still, there at Blizzard currently? Like, uh, and he's doing just fine. He's doing great. Like, Microsoft merging with him was a big payday for him. And then meanwhile, a bunch of really hardworking devs lost their jobs. So yeah, it's not a good thing when you see a bunch of mass layoffs in the industry. It's not a sign that, you know, video games are learning or doing better, because they're still going to be hiring. Those people who don't play games aren't hiring other people who understand games. They're not hiring people who can, improve customer satisfaction and understand things from the player's perspective and care. They're hiring people who want to increase profits and take as much money out of you as possible. Um, and the developers are just caught up in that system where you're there because you love it. You want to make a great product, and it just sucks the soul right out of you some days. And then, you do the best you can with what you got, but uh, yeah, just be careful. Like, there's only a handful of people that have decision making power when working on games, and when you're excited to see layoffs happen, thinking that that's going to improve things, like, I can tell you right now that the people who made the poor decisions, they're usually not the first ones to go. Actually, they're never the first ones to go. So, just some food for thought, I guess.